So exciting news in the book world today. Author and educator John Green just made the announcement of his first new novel in nearly a decade. It's going to be called Hollywood Ending. He made the announcement on his YouTube channel, Vlogbrothers, where he talks back and forth with his brother Hank. Highly recommend going and checking that out if you want to know a little bit more about the novel, the synopsis. Apparently, he's going to be signing like 80,000 live copies. So if you're in the mood for that kind of a live stream, you could also go and check that out. But this all got me thinking about something bigger than just one book release and why his books mattered in the first place. Because I think for a lot of people, in particular books like The Fault in Our Stars and Looking for Alaska, they weren't just popular works. They were the reason people started reading in the first place. And, if you read them when they came out, or even a few years later, like I did, you probably remember that experience. This wasn't just a story of the time, it was just really had that a really deep sense of uniqueness, right? That feeling of reading it, it just pulled you in, it stayed with you, you know, it it resonated after you finished reading. It was one of those books that you certainly couldn't leave completely dry-eyed if you're being honest. And I think for a lot of people, you know, this wasn't just like a book they liked. This was a book that made them care about the art of reading again. And for that reason, I'm deeply grateful to John Green. I think he's a beautiful person, and I think what he's done for literature is wonderful in the respect of, drawing people back in, getting people emotionally and intellectually invested as well in reading and in reading great works as well with what he does with his YouTube channel. And I think a part of this really comes from John Green himself, right? He wasn't just an author. There's a lot of great authors out there, and I would say that he's a good writer. He's a good author as well. I really enjoy his prose, his style, his Bildungsroman kind of coming of age stories really resonated with me at certain times in my life when those were the stories I needed. I think part of the reason for that is because he speaks directly to readers. A lot of great writers, I think, understand that. You have to speak directly to the readers. But he also does this not just through his writing, he does this through YouTube, through the way he talks about ideas and emotions, just being so authentic and so present. And that was a big inspiration for me as well. There's kind of this sense he understands, a lot about being young in his novels. And I think that's really important for a good coming of age writer. That deep feeling, trying to make sense of all of these questions of identity, of growth, coming of age. His most recent book, Turtles All the Way Down, this one right here, was published about 9 years ago. And there's themes in this book, the primary themes being anxiety, these kind of thought spirals. And John Green's been very open about his own struggles with anxiety and whatnot. And you can definitely see this book as maybe his most personal book, a book where all of those personal experiences are really, I guess every book to a certain degree entails an author's personal experiences, but this one in particular seems deeply distilled. Like a lot of his most um, authentic, deep, and challenging struggles, are present in this book. But that's his most recent one. That was nearly, a decade ago that he published that. Um, and then you take his more popular works, like Looking for Alaska, and of course, The Fault in Our Stars, and they just resonated with a generation, right? So The Fault in Our Stars, another great one here. Um, on the surface, this is a love story, right? But it's also a story, it's about mortality, meaning, finding a meaning and identity in the recognition of mortality and what that does to your relationships. What matters when the sense of an ending is potentially there. And I think that's what makes the tone of this different. It feels not distant or formal, very immediate, personal, like someone thinking out loud, right? And I think that kind of honest, almost stream of consciousness feel works really well in this novel. Um, you know, it's witty, it's intelligent. I think John Green's really good at that. His brother is also excellent at that, and he has novels as well that he's also published that are worth checking out. But there's that combination of accessibility, but also depth, right? It's not just a superficial book. And I think that's pretty rare for a lot of these more popular fiction type of novels, particularly in the coming of age genre. But that one, Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky, there's a few that I think are just really culturally important and they resonated with a generation and really impacted me too, as a writer. And I'll talk about that in a second here. I think the books work, you know, The Fault in Our Stars in particular, because of that voice, that natural conversational tone in it. It's got great pacing. You don't feel stuck. It's real. You feel really connected to everything that's going on. And there's a sense that the important questions are there. They're being asked. And I think that's so important in every great novel, whether we're talking, highbrow, what we might call highbrow fiction, or something more popular, something in between. These categories to me are not so important. It's a deep understanding of the questions that really matter. Not the answers necessarily, but the questions, asking the right questions, interesting questions, important questions, human questions. I think when a book does that, it can change your relationship with reading. And when there's that perfect confluence of, a popular book that holds the attention of people and the right questions, the deep, important questions, even non-readers recognize, hey, there is something here. There's something in reading that's so important. And yeah, I think that's why, in particular, Fault in Our Stars. And also, I don't have it right here, but Looking for Alaska, another one, you know, structurally very interesting. Something that as a kid when I was reading, and I was like, oh, that's cool that you can do that with structure. You can kind of have a before a major event and then after a major event, and that's two halves of the book essentially. Now, John Green's also written a lot of other things. He wrote the Anthropomorphine Reviewed, which I loved. This was basically he reviewed everything in our modern human world. He called it the Anthropomorphine or Anthropomorcine, sorry, um, like the human era essentially, and reviewing things from sunsets to tuberculosis. Obviously, sunsets I think got 5 stars, and tuberculosis got 1 or 0 stars. But it's like a 1 to 5 stars each just essays, essentially, a collection of essays. And I just thought it was super creative and super fun. And then also Crash Course. And Crash Course is just one of the greatest resources for educators. I know a lot of educators that reach out to me and say they're just so grateful for all of the resources there that Crash Course offers. And I am just really grateful to him for that as well. They didn't just write books, right? He helped people learn how to think, how to read, how to care. And I'm really excited for this new one for Hollywood ending because, everything he's going to explore there, it's going to be new. It's going to be his more mature take on things, and that's fine. And I don't know whether the novel is going to be one that I love or, one that is maybe my favorite or not my favorite. It doesn't matter because he's built enough trust that I'm just excited about the fact that he's putting out another book. And that's a really cool thing to see as an aspiring writer, how, just having that anticipation and that excitement gets people like, hey, I'm excited for that guy's book, regardless of what happens. I know I trust him enough that I'll take a chance on it, because it's a personal thing reading someone's book, right? There's so many books out there to choose from. How do you choose which book you want to read? Um, Now, I think he also has a deep, cultural impact, of course, like I mentioned, on readers. His books kind of created readers, people that didn't necessarily think they could read before. But on the other hand, not everyone loves it. Some people find his books overly sentimental. Some people feel the style is too self-aware, too tied to this specific, moment. Some people don't love the first person narrative style. That's fair. That's fine. That's great, right? I think that those criticisms point to what really makes this work. It's distinct, it has a voice, it takes emotional risks. That's essential for a novel, right? If you can't risk people not liking it, you can never say anything worth saying. I really think that's true about literature in general, right? If it's just banal, maybe no one will hate it, but no one will love it. And I think that's why people connected with this, you know? It it took some risks. He tried some things. He really wore his heart on his sleeve with I think every one of the books he wrote. Um, but for myself, coming back, bringing this back home a little bit, Looking for Alaska and The Fault in Our Stars, they really influenced the way I think about writing. You know, the work that I'm working on right now, I hope to publish this pretty soon. I won't go too much into details because I don't have the book finished yet, and I know it's hard to talk about a book before you finished it. But the one that I'm working on that I'm really excited about is basically a coming of age novel, and it's really influenced by John Green. It's influenced by Chbosky. It's been influenced by a lot of other writers as well. But his sense of narrative voice really interested me, right? It's also, you could, some people would argue it's somewhat derivative of something like Holden Caulfield um, from Catcher in the Rye or something like this. But, I think it's unique in its own way. All of these works, The Moviegoer, they all tell stories of people searching for meaning and identity in a confusing and chaotic world. And I think that's actually why that this kind of book, and I imagine the book that John Green is going to put out will be very much in the same vein, really matters today more than ever. We spend so much time skimming, scrolling, going quickly from one thing to the next. Books do the opposite, right? Books slow you down. They ask you to sit with something, to feel something fully. And I think for a lot of people, that's why we come back to reading in the first place. We want to be connected again with our human side, right? It's not about obligation or needing to read, or needing to look good. It's about finding that feeling, finding that thing you lost again. So with John Green releasing a new book and after all this time, I think people are paying attention, not just because of nostalgia, because, he wrote some very popular books over a decade ago, but I think it's because of what his writing really represents for so many readers, myself included. The possibility that a book could be both readable and deeply meaningful at the same time. And, I think at the end of the day, books that stay with us, well, I've mentioned this before, and I don't want to come across like a broken record, but they don't need to be the most complex ones. I love complex books as well. But the important thing is to find the books that make you feel something, that keep you reading, keep me wanting to read, right? And I think for a lot of people, Fault in Our Stars did that. So, in conclusion here, writers like John Green don't just write books. The real genius is that they create demand for books. They create really readers, people that want to keep reading books, that keep stories alive. So whether you've read them or not, this new book matters because he's keeping stories alive. He's keeping reading alive. Um, he's leading the charge of doing this at least. But if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. Let me know what book you care about reading. Maybe books that are coming out now that you feel are exciting, are getting you back into reading, or older books that you think have the potential to help wake up people and get them back into reading, wake up a generation to the joy and the importance of reading great books. And if you want more of this kind of content, I'm also writing and sharing more. I'm starting to do that on Substack as well. So the link is in my bio. Please subscribe. There's nothing on there right now, but I'm going to be adding some stuff very soon. And I really hope that you guys will join me up there. And if not, you'll at the very least like and subscribe and continue as we grow this community here, being a part of everything. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this was helpful. Take care.